Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
So glad to be here.
Yeah, today we are doing something a bit different. I want to give a quick overview of what we're covering today. We are doing a complete, unvarnished deep dive into a really specific stretch of coastline in Vietnam.
Right, the South Central Coast.
Exactly. And I was thinking about this. Usually, when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of, like, absolute clinical precision.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Think about it like engineering. You fall, you break your arm, the doctor puts the film up on the light board, and there is that jagged white line.
Yeah, there's no arguing with an x-ray.
Right. The doctor just points and says, there it is. That's the fracture. There is no ambiguity.
Yeah.
And today, we are applying that exact same kind of diagnostic precision, not to a bone, but to a destination on a map.
We really are, stripping it all the way back.
We are stripping away the romance, the marketing, all those glossy Instagram filters, and we are looking at the raw anatomy of a place. Because today, Saturday, April 18th, 2026, you happen to be sitting in the absolute perfect meteorological and economic window for this location.
It is a highly, highly specific window. And honestly, if we look at the historical data of how destinations evolve, it is a window that is closing very rapidly.
Like slamming shut.
Exactly. We are examining a geographic location that is currently defying the usual predictable life cycle of global tourism.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We are looking at a brutally honest logistics-first deep dive today. What we have here is a forensic breakdown that has completely removed the tourism board spin.
Which is so rare.
It really is. We have the raw, unvarnished data on a 100-kilometer stretch of empty, jagged, and just spectacularly beautiful coastline in Vietnam. It's a province called Phu Yen.
Right. Phu Yen.
Now, if you were listening to this and thinking, I've literally never heard of that place in my life, you are in the vast majority.
Oh, absolutely. Almost no international travelers have.
Mm-hmm. It sits very quietly on the South Central Coast, sandwiched right between the massive resort towers of Nha Trang to the south.
Right.
And the rising star of Quy Nhon to the north. But this analysis we're looking at today, it has the potential to completely rewrite what we think a trip to Southeast Asia actually costs in 2026.
And that is exactly where we need to focus our attention, because I am not here to simply recite a list of hotel prices or, tell you the street value of a bowl of noodle soup.
Though those numbers are crazy.
Oh, they are genuinely staggering when we get to them. But my role today is to synthesize the underlying mechanics. Like, we need to explore exactly why these market conditions exist in this specific province right now.
Right, the why is so important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to look at how the physical geography dictates the traveler's experience, how the macroeconomic factors are actively shifting, and ultimately help you decide if this particular stretch of the South China Sea fits your specific travel DNA.
Because it's not for everyone.
No, as the analysis makes very clear, it is absolutely not built for everyone.
It really isn't. And before we even begin to sketch out the sensory details like what the air smells like, the texture of the sand, all that, we have to talk about the urgency.
The ticking clock.
Yes. Why are we analyzing this right now?
Yeah.
Imagine someone tapping you on the shoulder and telling you that you could buy a top-tier tech stock right before a major industry-disrupting product announcement.
That's a great way to put it.
That is the exact level of urgency projecting from this data regarding Phu Yen in 2026. So I want to start with the math, because, frankly, when I saw the math, I thought there was a typo.
I don't blame you.
Can you walk us through the baseline hotel economics here?
Yeah, so the baseline numbers are really the anchor for this entire discussion. Currently, in 2026, the average hotel price in Tuy Hoa,
It is the capital city, right?
right, the capital of Phu Yen province,
Right.
the average price sits at $21 per night.
Wait, hold on. $21
Yes.
for a private hotel room in an entire capital city.
Yes, exactly. To break that down into categories, a standard, clean, 3-star hotel is averaging about $20 a night.
Wow.
If you want to step up to a 4-star property, meaning better linens, a proper pool, breakfast included, you are looking at somewhere between $23 and $34 a night.
That's just wild.
And a 5-star beachfront property will run you about $59.
$59 for 5 stars. Okay.
Yeah. And if you are on the backpacker end of the spectrum, the baseline floor for a hostel bed is $14.
Okay, but what about the ultra high end, like the luxury extreme?
Right. Even if we push this to the absolute luxury extreme, there's a property called Zannier Bai San Ho. It is a proper world-class resort occupying its own private peninsula.
Yeah.
That runs between $350 and $600 a night.
Okay, that high-end number sounds steep compared to $20, but I mean, how does that actually compare to the rest of the region? Because it feels like the baseline is operating in a totally different reality.
Oh, it's a massive discount across the board.
Hmm.
To give that Zannier figure a context, you are getting genuine architectural digest level international luxury at roughly 60% of what you would pay for an equivalent property on the Andaman coast of Thailand or down in Bali's Uluwatu district.
60% less. Wow.
Yeah. And if we look at the standard rooms, the price gap is even more pronounced. A comparable 3-star beach hotel just 3.5 hours south of Phu Yen in Nha Trang will cost you $45 to $80 a night.
Right.
Move north to Hoi An, and you're looking at $55 to $95. Jump over to Phu Quet in Thailand, $90 to $130. Bali is $80 to $120.
So we are looking at a 40 to 55% discount just for moving a few hours up the coast.
Exactly.
But I want to push back on this a bit, or at least ask for some clarification. You mentioned earlier this is a market inefficiency.
Yes.
That sounds like something straight out of an economics 101 textbook. What does that actually mean for me, the person standing on the beach with my wallet?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the mechanics of a market inefficiency play out in tourism.
Okay.
When economists use that term, they mean the price of an asset does not accurately reflect its true value based on the available information. In this case, Phu Yen has the physical geography of a major Tier 1 coastal destination.
Right, the beaches, the cliffs.
Exactly. It has pristine beaches, dramatic cliffs, deep cultural heritage, but it currently possesses the pricing structure of a forgotten rural province.
So why is it so cheap?
The reason for this inefficiency is a massive imbalance between supply and demand. The international traveler flow, which usually brings foreign currency and drives up local prices, has not yet arrived in volume.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, the demand side of the equation is almost entirely sustained by domestic Vietnamese travelers. And domestic tourism, generally speaking, demands a lower price point than international tourism.
But the analysis is screaming that this isolation is over.
It is.
There are 3 converging drivers of urgency for 2026 that make this a ticking clock. And the first one is a massive media spotlight. Lonely Planet just named neighboring Quy Nhon, which is only 2 hours north by road, one of their best destinations in the world for 2026.
Which is an absolute seismic event for a local tourism economy.
Really, just a guidebook mention.
Oh, definitely. When a major global publisher directs its massive audience toward a specific dot on the map, historical data shows it reliably produces a 25 to 40% visitor growth within an 18-month window.
But Quy Nhon is 2 hours away. Does a spotlight on Quy Nhon actually change the math in Tuy Hoa?
Absolutely, because of a phenomenon known as the spillover effect.
Okay, spillover.
Yeah, international travelers rarely fly halfway across the globe to stay strictly within the city limits of one town. They fly into Quy Nhon, they rent a car or a scooter, and they begin moving laterally down the connected coastline.
They explore.
They explore. Phu Yen is located directly downstream of that impending flood of international curiosity.
That makes total sense. And driver number 2 backs that up with raw data. The first quarter 2026 tourism numbers for Vietnam show 25% year-on-year growth in regional tourism revenue.
Right.
They logged 2.3 million visitors in the first quarter alone. So the tide isn't just coming, it is already rising.
It's here.
And driver number 3 seems to be the final nail in the coffin for this quiet era. Tuy Hoa's airport, Dong Tak Airport Code, TBB, now has reliable, daily direct flights from Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, and Da Nang.
That third point, it just cannot be overstated. In the physics of global travel, access friction is usually the primary moat that protects a destination from mass tourism.
Access friction, meaning like how annoying it is to get there.
Precisely. If reaching a beautiful beach requires an international flight, a domestic connection, a 6-hour cramped bus ride over poorly paved roads, and then a ferry,
People just won't do it.
the mass market simply will not go. The friction is too high. It remains the domain of hardcore backpackers. But the moment you introduce reliable, daily direct flights on major domestic carriers, that friction drops to near zero. The protective moat has been completely filled in.
Okay, so the math is incredible and the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
But I have to ask the skeptical question.
Go for it.
Is it just cheap? Or is this actually a premium travel experience hiding behind a low price tag? Because, let's be honest, sometimes things are $21 a night for a very good reason.
Fair point.
Right. Sometimes the roof leaks, the service is hostile, and the beach happens to be located next to an industrial runoff pipe.
That is the essential, critical question to ask whenever you are presented with a massive budget outlier.
Right.
To answer it, we have to transition from the macroeconomic data to the physical reality of the province. What are you actually encountering when you step off that plane?
Let's do that. Let's look at the first impressions and the geography of all this empty space. Because the sensory details provided in the analysis are incredibly vivid.
They really are.
It talks about the arrival at TBD Airport. Now, this airport is only about 7 to 10 kilometers from the center of Tuy Hoa City. But during the flight approach, as you're looking out the window, you aren't seeing massive infrastructure.
Right. No huge building.
You are looking at kilometer after kilometer of sweeping, curved bays and palm-bagged beaches with almost zero built environment.
If we connect this to the broader Southeast Asian travel experience, it is a striking contrast.
Oh, for sure.
If you have ever flown into Phuket or Bali in recent years, you know the coastline is a dense, unbroken wall of mega resorts, concrete seawalls, and neon signage.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming.
Exactly. Flying into Phu Yen, you are looking at undeveloped raw territory. In the capital city itself, Tuy Hoa is remarkably modest. It has a population of roughly 200,000 people.
That's quite small.
It is. It operates as a working coastal fishing port, not a manufactured tourist hub.
And right in the middle of it, you have this incredible geographical and historical anchor. Nan Mountain rises right behind the town, and sitting perfectly on the summit is an 11th century Cham temple.
Yes, the Champa Tower.
Just casually a 1,000-year-old structure overlooking a modern city.
The presence of the Cham temple is a vital piece of context. The Champa Kingdom was a maritime empire that dominated the coast of what is now central and southern Vietnam for centuries.
Wow, centuries.
They were master builders in red brick, deeply influenced by Hinduism, which is why these towers have such a distinct, almost intricate stepped architecture compared to the later Vietnamese styles.
Right.
Having an intact 11th century Champa Tower acting as a daily backdrop to a working city gives you a sense of the sheer historical depth layered beneath the everyday life here.
That is amazing. But what I really loved in the breakdown were the smells and the sounds.
Oh, the sensory details.
Yeah. It notes that when you step out of the airport terminal, you don't smell coconut sunscreen and chlorinated resort pools. You smell the heavy salt of the ocean.
Yeah.
You smell the sharp tang of diesel from the boat engines docked in the harbor. You smell charcoal smoke drifting up from roadside stalls where people are grilling the morning's catch.
It's a very active environment.
And the sound profile isn't the drone of bumper-to-bumper car traffic. It's the high-pitched hum of motorbike engines, the rhythmic calls of fish sellers in the morning market, and the low, steady, booming percussion of waves hitting a beach.
A beach without concrete walls, exactly.
A beach that doesn't have a massive wall of concrete hotels echoing the noise back.
Which brings us to a crucial distinction in modern travel. The concept of authentic travel versus manufactured experiences.
Okay, unpack that.
The empty space described in the analysis is not an absence of value. It is the presence of an unfiltered culture. The physical geography itself hasn't been monetized yet.
Right.
Take the local geology, for example. The province is highly famous among domestic travelers for a site called Gan Ayaya, which translates to the Disc Rock Cliffs.
I saw the photos of this in the source material, and it looks almost alien.
It really does.
It looks like tens of thousands of perfect hexagonal stone coins stacked tightly together, rising right out of the sea.
Wait, how does a rock formation even look like that naturally?
It is a phenomenal display of geological physics. What you are looking at is the result of a volcanic eruption that occurred millions of years ago.
Okay.
When the superheated basaltic lava flowed across the land and met the cold water of the ocean, it caused a massive thermal shock. The lava cooled and contracted incredibly rapidly. As it contracted, the physical stress caused the rock to fracture. And because of the uniform composition of the lava, it fractured in almost perfect mathematical patterns, predominantly hexagons.
That is wild.
It is incredibly rare. From a geological standpoint, it is one of only a few sites globally that is comparable to the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Now, the Giant's Causeway is heavily scaffolded, heavily marketed, and sees millions of international tourists. Gan Dadai is virtually unknown outside of Vietnam.
That's such a crazy contrast. Beyond the cliffs, the province also features Bai Chep, which is this quintessential, perfect, palm-backed arc of white sand, and Dien, which is the easternmost geographical point of mainland Vietnam.
So picture this. You land at the airport. Because it's a small domestic hub, you aren't fighting crowds.
Hmm.
You clear immigration and grab your bags in maybe 5 minutes.
Easy.
You pull up a ride-hailing app on your phone, get a car into town, and within 30 minutes of your plane's wheels touching the tarmac,
Right.
you are sitting on a tiny plastic stool at a roadside stall right on the beachfront promenade.
Yeah.
You are eating absolutely fresh charcoal-grilled seafood that was pulled from the ocean that morning. The total cost for you and your travel partner, including ice-cold local beers, is $6 per person.
Incredible.
And the only soundtrack is the ocean. That is what $21 a night pricing gives you access to.
It is an incredibly compelling value proposition. However, and this is a massive structural but, you cannot simply look at a calendar, find a cheap flight for a random week you have off work, and go.
Bye.
In a destination that possesses minimal, enclosed, air-conditioned mega resorts, the weather is not merely a matter of personal comfort. It is an absolute structural barrier to the physical viability of the trip.
Oh man, climate roulette. This is where people get it so wrong.
Every time.
You can have the best itinerary in the world, but if you fight the weather here, you will lose. We need to explain this clearly because the two-season climate of the South Central Coast operates differently than a typical Western holiday schedule.
Exactly. Let's walk through the calendar sequentially, because getting the season wrong doesn't just mean you get a sunburn, it means your trip ceases to function.
Okay, starting with the early part of the year, January through March. The data classifies this as the cool, dry season. The temperatures are sitting at a really comfortable 22 to 27 degrees Celsius.
Beautiful weather.
The seas are relatively calm and the skies are clear. Interestingly, domestic Vietnamese tourism is very low during this window. Why is that?
It comes down to cultural preferences regarding beach weather. For local Vietnamese travelers, 22 to 27 degrees is considered too cool for swimming.
Too cool. Really?
Yeah, they prefer to visit the coast during the intense heat of the summer months. Because domestic demand drops, this January to March window is a fantastic time for international travelers to find extreme bargains.
Nice.
A 4-star beachfront room that might cost $50 in the summer can easily drop to $25 or $30 a night.
But there's a massive logistical landmine hidden in this window. Lunar New Year, or Tet.
Yes.
In 2026, Tet ran from February 16th to the 22nd, and the analysis is incredibly firm on this. Do not travel during Tet unless you know exactly what you are doing.
That is correct, unless your specific stated goal is deep cultural immersion and observing holiday traditions. Tet is an operational nightmare for a casual tourist.
What actually happens during Tet that makes it so difficult?
It is the most important holiday in the Vietnamese calendar. It is a time for family reunification. Millions of people travel back to their home provinces.
So transit is packed.
Exactly. What this means for you is that the transport infrastructure is pushed beyond maximum capacity. Flights are fully booked months in advance and are extremely expensive. Hotels fill up entirely with domestic families.
Right.
But most importantly, the local economy essentially shuts down. The owners of the small restaurants, the street food stalls, the independent tour guides, they all stop working for a week to be with their families.
Wow, everything just stops.
The vibrant street life you came to see disappears behind closed doors. The friction of basic travel becomes incredibly high.
Okay, so avoid mid-February.
Mm.
But once the holiday clears, we enter the transition period, which brings us to April and May. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, it does.
Because today is April 18th, 2026. Every single metric in our analysis points to April and May as the absolute undisputed sweet spot for this province.
The meteorological alignment during these 2 months is essentially perfect. The weather peaks at a gorgeous dry 28 to 32 degrees Celsius.
Perfect beach weather.
The ocean is glassy and calm, which is ideal for boat trips and swimming. And May, specifically, is highlighted as the single best month of the year to be on this coastline.
That's so good to know.
Furthermore, the domestic flight prices from major hubs like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City are operating at their baseline low, running roughly $36 to $60 for a one-way ticket.
So you are sitting right now in the exact optimal window to book a May trip before the Lonely Planet effect fully saturates the summer season.
Right.
Because that summer season changes the dynamic entirely. June, July, and August are the domestic Vietnamese peak. The heat really climbs here, hitting 33 to 38 degrees Celsius on the hottest days.
It gets very hot.
Prices for accommodation jump 30 to 50% above those shoulder season rates we just talked about.
You also have to navigate the domestic public holidays, specifically the combination of Reunification Day on April 30th and Labor Day on May 1st.
Oh, back-to-back holidays.
That creates a long holiday weekend that triggers a massive wave of domestic beach trips. However, the data does note a crucial point of perspective. Even at its absolute peak capacity in July, Phu Yen's beaches remain dramatically less crowded than peak season Nha Trang or Da Nang.
That's a good silver lining.
Yeah.
But then we hit the danger zone.
Yeah.
September marks the chaotic transition, and then we hit October and November. And the advice here is simple. Just don't do it. Do not go.
Exactly.
Why is it so dangerous then?
If we connect this to the broader mechanics of regional meteorology, it is entirely predictable. Phu Yen sits directly in the path of the South China Sea typhoon track.
Right.
October and November are not just the rainy season where you experience a heavy, refreshing afternoon downpour that clears up for a beautiful evening. This is the peak window for cyclonic storm systems hitting the south central coast.
The analysis mentions actual flooded streets in Tuy Hoa City. Regular systemic flight cancellations at Dong Tak Airport due to severe crosswinds and visibility issues. It even notes that some of the smaller, independent beachfront guest houses simply board up their windows and close operations entirely for these 2 months.
The structural reality of massive weather systems cannot be negotiated with or life-hacked.
You can't just power through it.
No, unless you have a bizarre affinity for sitting in a damp hotel room watching horizontal rain batter the windows, possess incredibly robust trip interruption insurance, and have a completely flexible schedule that can handle multi-day airport closures, you must avoid October and November.
December slowly eases out of that severe typhoon risk, but the sea remains rush and the temperatures drop back down to around 20 to 24 degrees.
Which is cool again.
Yeah, the analysis calls it the low season, but warns it's not the smart low season. It's just inherently unreliable.
Yeah.
So the takeaway is absolute. Aim for that April to May sweet spot or the January to March window, provided you dodged Tut. Okay, so assuming you've nailed the calendar, you've picked the perfect week in May, where do you actually sleep? And what is the real out-of-pocket financial damage going to look like?
Let's get into the budget.
Let's break down the accommodation zones because where you stay completely defines the trip.
The province effectively divides into 3 highly distinct zones, and your choice of zone dictates your daily logistics, your food access, and the aesthetic of your experience.
Okay, Zone 1 is Tuy Hoa City and the city beachfront. This is your logistical anchor. This is where the main larger hotels are located. Properties like the Sala Tuy Hoa Beach Hotel, the Stilia Beach Resort, and for the backpacker crowd, places like Laya Hostel.
Right.
If you stay here, you are within walking distance to hundreds of local restaurants, the massive morning market, and coffee shops. However, the analysis notes a geographical caveat. The beach here is broad and clean, but it has coarse sand.
Very coarse.
It is very much a working city beach, populated by locals exercising in the early morning and families gathering at sunset.
It lacks the pristine, isolated resort aesthetic. Zone 1 is optimized for first-time visitors who want easy access to infrastructure, solo travelers who want to be around people, and culinary travelers whose primary goal is eating.
Then you have Zone 2, which is Bai Sep and the southern coastal stretch, located about 20 to 30 minutes south of the city center.
The boutique zone.
Exactly. You find smaller, independent guest houses here, places like the Dreamville Beach Homestay. It's located along that famous palm-backed stretch of fine white sand that you see in the promotional photos.
Zone 2 is ideal for couples who want that iconic, romantic, quiet beach aesthetic, but who still want the safety net of being a short scooter ride away from the city's hospitals, larger markets, and diverse dining options.
And finally, Zone 3 is in the northern coast, up around the Gan Ai Cliff region. This is roughly 45 minutes to an hour drive north of the city.
It's quite far out.
It is geographically remote, it is visually dramatic, and accommodation up here is highly, highly limited. This is exactly where that ultra-luxury property we mentioned earlier, Zannier Bai San Ho, is located.
Now, let's examine what these zones actually cost in practice across different traveler profiles.
I can't wait for this part.
Let's start with the absolute floor. The low budget, the backpacker tier, is astonishing. We're talking about $22 to $43 per person per day, all in.
I have to stop you there. I'm sorry, $22 a day total for everything.
For everything.
I know we talked about the $14 hostel beds, but if a bed is $14, that leaves $8 a day for transportation and 3 meals. How does the math actually work? How is that economically sustainable for the local community?
It works because of the hyper-local supply chain. When you exist at the backpacker tier in Phu Yen, you are opting out of the imported economy entirely.
Okay, I see.
You are eating ingredients grown or caught within a 10-kilometer radius. You are sitting on a plastic stool that costs the vendor $2 to buy, eating from a bowl that was washed by hand.
The overhead is low.
The overhead for these local businesses is incredibly low, and the volume of local customers is high. So that $22 includes your $14 bed, eating a breakfast banh mi for $1, a bowl of local noodles for lunch for $1.50, sharing a scooter rental with a friend for $3 each, and paying the $1 entry fees to the natural sites.
Wow.
It is a masterclass in local economic efficiency.
That is wild. You could barely buy a mediocre sandwich and a latte at an airport in a Western country for $22, and here it buys you 24 hours of accommodation, 3 hot meals, and coastal transportation.
Exactly.
But while that's great for backpackers, the mid-range budget is where I think the value proposition is absolutely unmatched.
The mid-range couple bracket is indeed where the economic advantage of this inefficiency really flexes its muscles.
A mid-range traveler is projected to spend between $50 and $102 per person per day. So for a couple traveling together, that's a combined daily budget of $100 to $204.
Yep.
What does that actually buy you in Zone 1 or Zone 2? It buys you a lovely, air-conditioned, 4-star beachfront hotel room with a pool and a massive breakfast buffet.
Beautiful.
It buys you full restaurant dining with massive, fresh seafood dinners every single night. It buys you the luxury of hiring a private, air-conditioned car and driver for a half day to take you out to the cliffs, and maybe throwing in an hour-long spa massage in the afternoon.
That's a lot of value.
A whole week of this luxurious, highly comfortable zero-stress travel runs roughly $700 to $1,400 total. Compare that to a week in Bali doing the exact same caliber of activities, which the data shows costs $1,400 to $2,500.
Yeah, the difference is stark.
It is literally half the price for a more peaceful, less congested experience.
It is a remarkable tier. However, we must critically analyze the missing middle when we look at the high-end budget.
A missing middle.
Yes, the luxury tier is projected to run $305 to $630 per person per day. But the ceiling in Phu Yen is extremely narrow.
Meaning there aren't a lot of options at the top.
Exactly. Phu Yen has brilliant basic options, excellent mid-tier hotels, and then exactly one ultra-luxury resort in Zannier Bai San Ho. It completely lacks the broad, competitive luxury ecosystem that you find in a mature market like Phuket.
Why is that?
Building a true luxury ecosystem requires a massive, invisible supply chain. You need reliable access to high-end imported wines, specialized culinary ingredients, and most importantly, a deep local labor pool of highly trained, multilingual hospitality staff.
Of course.
Phu Yen doesn't have that deep bench yet. So you have one spectacular oasis of luxury, but you don't have a neighborhood of them.
Right. If your version of a great vacation is hopping between 4 different world-class, globally branded beach clubs in a single week, Phu Yen is simply not going to deliver that.
It will not.
But what about the remote workers? Digital nomads are always hunting for the next cheap, beautiful coastal base. How does it stack up for them?
The digital nomad profile is complex here. The monthly all-in cost is incredibly attractive. Roughly $600 to $1,000 a month, covers a furnished apartment, local food, and scooter transport.
That's really cheap.
However, there are 0 dedicated co-working spaces in the entire province.
0.
0. Connectivity is perfectly functional for basic tasks, but it is not enterprise grade. You will be working from hotel lobbies or local cafes where the Wi-Fi might drop during a heavy rainstorm.
That sounds risky for work.
If your job requires uploading massive video files or maintaining perfect stability for high-stakes video calls, this is not Da Nang. It is highly recommended as a 1 to 3 week stopover, but not as a permanent high-tech base.
Which honestly might be a structural blessing that keeps it authentic for a bit longer.
Totally agree.
Because a massive part of that daily budget, no matter what tier you were in, goes toward food. And the culinary identity of this province is absolutely fascinating. This isn't the internationalized, watered-down tourist food you get on Khao San Road in Bangkok.
Not at all.
This food requires an adventurous palate.
This is the genuine, historic diet of a community that has survived on deep-sea fishing for 400 years. You will not find avocado toast on every corner.
Definitely no avocado coast.
You will find dishes deeply, practically rooted in the local maritime supply chain.
Okay, so if we aren't eating overpriced avocado toast, what is actually on the plate? What does a 400-year-old fishing culture eat for dinner?
Get ready for this.
Let's talk about the anchor dish. Signature dish number 1. I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly. Mutkan gaidung. When I read the translation for this, my jaw dropped.
It's surprising, isn't it?
It is a tuna eye, a literal fist-sized giant oceanic tuna eye.
That is correct. It is one of the most distinctive regional specialties in all of Vietnam.
The preparation sounds intense. They take this massive eye, place it in a small earthen clay pot, and slow simmer it with a very specific blend of Chinese medicinal herbs, aromatics, and spices until the eye itself breaks down into this rich, incredibly collagen-heavy delicacy. A full portion at a highly recommended local spot, a place called Batam near the main market, runs about $3.20 to $6. I have to ask you, as someone analyzing this data, would you sit down and eat a giant tuna eye?
From both a cultural and culinary perspective, absolutely.
Really?
Oh, yes. It is a brilliant example of a zero-waste food culture. In a community that makes its living hauling massive oceanic tuna out of the South China Sea, no part of that extremely valuable catch can be discarded.
That makes a lot of sense.
The eye contains a massive amount of dense nutritional value and collagen. Furthermore, the use of the Chinese medicinal herbs points to a highly sophisticated culinary understanding.
How so?
The herbs are specifically chosen to balance and cut through the extreme richness and fishiness of the eye. It is a deeply authentic experience.
See, I love that. Stepping out of your culinary comfort zone is the price of admission for genuine travel.
It really is.
But if a giant staring eyeball in a clay pot is a bit too intense for your very first day in town, the analysis highlights signature dish number 2 as the perfect entry point.
Yes, a bit more approachable.
It's called Bánh Can Hut. This is a thick, chewy rice noodle soup served with savory slices of fried fish cake, all swimming in a clear, sweet local broth.
Sounds amazing.
But the defining feature is that the entire surface of the bowl is covered in an absolute mountain of vibrant, green, chopped Chinese chives. You can get a massive steaming bowl of this at almost any stall on the morning market for between $1.20 and $1.80.
The street food economy here operates with such efficiency that the data explicitly notes a very counterintuitive point for budget travelers. Self-catering makes zero economic sense.
Oh, absolutely. I've done the math on this in other parts of Asia, and it holds true here. A fresh, crispy banh mi sandwich loaded with herbs and roasted meat is 80 cents to $1.40. A slow-dripped, incredibly strong, local Vietnamese coffee with condensed milk is the same price. If you go to the local co.opr grocery store, yes, a loaf of bread or a pack of raw noodles is pennies.
Sure.
But by the time you buy the ingredients, the oil, the spices, and spend an hour cooking in your rental apartment, you've wasted time and money. Why would you ever cook when you can walk outside, sit on a plastic stool, and have a local master who has been perfecting one specific broth for 30 years hand you a perfect bowl of noodles for under $2?
You wouldn't. It just doesn't make sense. Beyond the sheer economics of the food itself, understanding the cultural etiquette of engaging with this community is vital.
Right.
Because this area is not heavily accustomed to international tourism norms, the locals expect a certain baseline of respect for their daily rhythms.
There are a few quick rules of the road we need to cover. First, shoe removal is standard practice when entering homes, many smaller independent guest houses, and certainly all temples.
It's a sign of respect.
The rule of thumb is simple. Look down at the door. If there's a pile of sandals, take yours off. Second, Buddhism and ancestor worship are incredibly active daily practices here.
You'll see it everywhere.
You will see ornate roadside shrines, small altars in restaurants, and family temples everywhere. They are not mere photo props. Be respectful. Don't touch them. Don't let your kids climb on them.
Important advice.
Third, and this is a big one for pacing your day, respect the afternoon rest. Between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m., many small shops, market stalls, and even some cafes simply shut down and pull the metal grates shut.
That afternoon rest is a functional adaptation to the equatorial heat. When the sun is at its absolute peak, physical labor becomes dangerous.
It's just too hot.
Exactly. The community rests. As a traveler, you should not expect the 24/7 always open convenience culture that you find in a Western city. You have to adapt your metabolism to the local clock.
And finally, tipping. The analysis notes that tipping is not a deep-rooted tradition here. However, leaving 10,000 to 20,000 Vietnamese dong, which is less than a single US dollar, is considered a very polite, generous gesture for good service in a restaurant or for a driver.
It is appreciated, though never aggressively demanded.
It is paramount to remember that you are visiting a functioning working community, not a theme park designed exclusively for your leisure.
That is so key.
That profound lack of what we call tourist scaffolding is the exact mechanism that keeps the prices incredibly low and the authenticity high. But that lack of scaffolding also means you will inevitably encounter friction.
Wait, you used that phrase earlier, tourist scaffolding. I love the visual of that, but what does it actually look like in practice? Actually, let me explain tourist scaffolding. It refers to the invisible network of services designed solely to make a foreigner's life frictionless. It's the English language menus with pictures. It's the dedicated airport shuttle buses that run every 20 minutes. It's the tour desks in every hotel lobby that will book your entire day with one credit card swipe.
Ah, that's what you mean.
When that scaffolding is removed, you are dealing with the raw local infrastructure.
And dealing with raw infrastructure inevitably leads to traps. With authentic, undeveloped travel comes the friction of logistical failures. The data highlights 3 very specific traps that routinely cost unprepared travelers a significant amount of money, time, and sanity.
Let's save everyone from them right now.
Yes, let's.
The first major hurdle is the transport trap. As we discussed when mapping the geography, the major natural sites in Phu Yen are spread out over a 100-kilometer stretch of coastline.
Yeah, you can't just step out of your hotel lobby in Tuy Hoa, raise your hand, and casually hail a cruising taxi to take you to the next beach.
They just aren't there.
They don't exist in that volume outside the city center. If you rely on last-minute taxi hopping, you will fail. The analysis outlines a very common scenario. A couple realizes on day 3 of their trip that they haven't seen the famous basalt cliffs yet.
Right.
They try to hire a driver at the absolute last minute from the hotel desk, and because there is no established competitive tour network, they end up paying $80 for a day trip that should have cost half that.
Ouch.
The fix here is proactive planning. You have 2 options. You either rent a scooter for $6 to $10 a day, though we need to talk about the massive physical risks of that in a second, or you pre-book a private car and drive her through your hotel at least 24 hours in advance.
That's the way to do it.
If you plan ahead, a private driver for a full day should only run you $36 to $52.
The second trap we have already covered in depth, the typhoon trap. Do not book travel in October or November. The structural reality of the weather systems cannot be bypassed.
Oh, shit.
Exactly. The third trap occurs within minutes of your arrival. The unofficial taxi trap at the airport.
Picture this. You land. You've been traveling all day. You are tired. And the moment you step out of the tiny terminal, an unmetered driver approaches you and smoothly quotes you 200,000 to 400,000 dong for the short ride into Tuy Hoa City.
Which sounds cheap.
Right. To a Westerner doing the mental math, $8 to $16 sounds perfectly reasonable, even cheap for an airport transfer. But it's a scam.
Total scam.
The actual correct metered rate for that distance is 60,000 to 70,000 dong, about $2.50.
That's quite a markup.
The fix here is incredibly simple, and you must do it before you leave home. Download the Grab app.
The Grab app is essential.
It is the Uber of Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
You input your destination, the price is fixed, it is transparent, and you won't get taken for a ride, literally or figuratively.
There is also a micro trap related to dining that travelers must be aware of. The seafood trap.
Oh, this one is sneaky.
Along the beachfront promenades, you will see dozens of stalls displaying incredible fresh seafood on ice. However, prices are frequently omitted from the menu boards.
Right.
If you point to a fish in order without explicitly establishing the price per kilo beforehand, you may be charged a tourist rate at the end of the meal that is 50 to 100% higher than the local rate.
Always get a written price.
Yeah.
Or, punch the number into your phone's calculator and show it to the vendor to confirm the price in Vietnamese dong before you order that massive plate of grilled prawns.
Good tip.
For context, large prawns should be running between 300,000 and 450,000 dong per kilogram. Know your baseline anchors. Now, talking about scams and traps naturally brings us to a much more serious conversation about actual safety.
Yes.
And this raises an important question. How do we balance the deep desire for raw, unpolished exploration with the reality of genuine physical risks?
That tension is the core defining feature of traveling to any undeveloped destination. On one hand, the lack of a mature, heavily trafficked tourist ecosystem means Phu Yen is incredibly safe from a traditional crime perspective.
The data is incredibly reassuring on this front. It states that violent crime against tourists is effectively non-existent, and even petty theft, like pickpocketing, is rare compared to major European capitals.
That's great to hear.
For solo female travelers, it is highly rated. The local dining culture is deeply welcoming to solo diners. The city promenade in Tuy Hoa is active and well lit at night. You don't have the aggressive, highly organized scam networks that you might encounter in the heavily trafficked areas of Hanoi's Old Quarter or around Ha Long Bay.
However, the absence of human-driven crime does not equate to an absence of danger.
Unfortunately, no.
In fact, the raw, undeveloped infrastructure increases physical risks exponentially. The single biggest real danger in Phu Yen, and frankly in much of rural Southeast Asia, is road safety.
Yeah, the roads.
Specifically, the severe risk profile of tourists renting and riding scooters.
Right. I've seen this play out. You arrive, the sun is shining, the rental is only $6 a day, and you get on a scooter feeling very free, very local. But what makes these roads so incredibly dangerous for an outsider?
It is a combination of unfamiliar physics and unwritten cultural rules. You are navigating coastal roads with blind corners.
Okay.
You are dealing with unexpected agricultural variables. A massive water buffalo or a flock of chickens can and will dart out into your lane without warning.
A water buffalo just in the road.
Exactly. Furthermore, there is a general lack of municipal street lighting once you leave the city limits, making night driving treacherous. But the most dangerous element is that local traffic operates on a highly complex set of informal, unwritten right-of-way conventions.
Unwritten rules?
Yes. A larger vehicle assumes right-of-way. A driver pulling out into traffic assumes you will flow around them, not that they must wait for you. Foreign drivers almost always misread these cues, resulting in collisions.
If you are determined to ride, the analysis mandates, not suggests mandates, a full-face helmet. Do not rely on the cheap, thin plastic shells they hand out at the rental shops. Those are essentially useless in a crash at speed.
Completely useless.
But there is a massive legal and financial trap hidden here regarding insurance, isn't there?
Yes. And it is a trap that routinely bankrupts tourists. To ride legally, you must possess a valid international driving permit that is specifically endorsed for motorcycles.
Okay, an IDP.
Almost all standard Western travel insurance policies contain a strict exclusion clause. If you crash a scooter and you do not possess a valid motorcycle license from your home country, they will explicitly and categorically deny your medical claim.
Which is a terrifying prospect, especially considering the medical infrastructure in this specific province. The local hospital in Tuy Hoa is perfectly fine for minor ailments or basic stitches.
Right.
But for significant trauma like a severe scooter crash or complex medical emergencies, the local facilities lack the specialized trauma units required. You would need to be medically evacuated to a major center in Nha Trang or airlifted to Ho Chi Minh City.
Which is incredibly expensive.
If you are traveling with a family, or if you plan on riding a scooter, comprehensive medical evacuation insurance is completely non-optional. You absolutely must have it.
It is the necessary, pragmatic layer of armor that allows you to actually enjoy the destination. You strictly manage the severe tail-end risks so you can comfortably access the profound rewards.
And oh, the rewards. We've mapped out the physical geography, the budget floors, and the very real dangers of the road. But if you are willing to brave the unpaved roads and the language barrier, what is the actual payoff on the other side?
Let's talk about the payoff.
What does that raw, unpolished experience actually feel like?
Okay.
Let's look at the emotional peaks and valleys of a trip here.
The emotional peaks described in the data are deeply tied to the profound isolation of the landscape. They are moments defined by what is missing.
Picture this scenario. It is 5 a.m. at Dien. You wake up in the pitch dark, you navigate the drive out to the easternmost geographic point of the country, and you walk up the stone steps to the lighthouse.
Yeah?
You are standing on a cliff edge, watching the very first rays of the sunrise hit the nation of Vietnam. And the beauty of that moment is entirely about the absence of tourist scaffolding.
Nothing in the way.
There are no hawkers aggressively trying to sell you plastic souvenirs. There are no massive, multi-level concrete viewing platforms built to accommodate diesel tour buses. It is just you, the sheer cliffs, the roaring ocean, and maybe a few dozen local Vietnamese travelers quietly sharing the silence of the dawn.
Or consider the experience at Gananaya at 9 a.m. You pay your $1 entry fee.
Or dollar.
You walk down to the water and you are physically walking on, climbing over, and touching these ancient, perfectly geometric basalt columns.
Unbelievable.
You are directly interacting with a world-class, globally significant geological formation without the barrier of velvet ropes, massive crowds, or aggressive mass-market infrastructure.
And then on the drive back to the city, you pull over at a small roadside stall overlooking a completely untouched, sweeping coastal landscape.
Yes.
You sit down and eat banhai, a delicate dish of steamed woven rice vermicelli topped with rich grilled pork and fresh herbs, for $1.60. That is the magic of this province.
It really is.
But, to keep it brutally honest, there are valleys. If you arrive with the wrong expectations, you will face real disappointment. Let's talk about the friction points.
The primary disappointment for many international travelers will be the reality of the main city beach in Tuy Hoa.
Yeah, if you are flying in expecting the powdery, flower-like white sand of the Maldives or the highly manicured, lounge chair-lined resort vibe of a high-end Thai island right in the city center, you will be deeply let down.
It's not that.
The sand on the city beach is coarse. The water can be choppy. The aesthetic backdrop is a functional working Vietnamese city, not a curated jungle paradise. To get to those pristine, postcard-perfect beaches like Bai Sep, you have to commit to a drive.
Additionally, the culinary depth, while incredible for local food, is highly localized and rigidly inflexible.
Very inflexible.
If you are a traveler who demands a wide variety of Western comfort food, or if you have strict, complex dietary or vegetarian requirements, the options here are extremely thin compared to a cosmopolitan international hub like Da Nang or Ho Chi Minh City.
And the language barrier is real. Outside of that single luxury resort, the English proficiency at standard hotel front desks, local restaurants and markets is going to be a struggle.
You'll need apps.
You'll be relying heavily on translation apps and pointing. So what does this all mean for the prospective traveler?
It means that these disappointments, the coarse sand, the intense language barrier, the total lack of Western comfort food act as structural filters,
Oh, I like that term.
they are the exact mechanisms that keep the demanding mass market away. They are preserving the destination for a specific type of traveler who is willing to accept rough edges in exchange for intense authenticity and extreme financial value.
It is absolutely not for someone who wants a fully scaffolded, effortless, English-speaking, frictionless luxury resort holiday where everything is curated for them.
No, definitely not.
If you want that experience, there are plenty of mature markets that will gladly sell it to you at a massive premium.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at those rough edges and thinking, hey, I can handle that, I want the adventure, let's see how Phu Yen stacks up against its direct competitors.
Let's do it.
Because the analysis provides a really clear final matrix to help make the definitive call.
Let's begin by examining the direct alternatives. If the friction we just spent the last hour describing sounds like slightly too much work, you look 2 hours north to Quy Nhon.
Quy Nhon is the destination Lonely Planet just highlighted. It has a more developed infrastructure, a much wider range of mid to high-end hotels, and a more established, diverse food scene.
Right, more options.
But because of that existing scaffolding, it is already 10 to 25% more expensive than Phu Yen across the board. You go there for a slightly easier, slightly more polished trip, but you pay the premium for that ease.
Conversely, if you desire ultimate pristine isolation and have an expanding, highly flexible budget, you look southward to the Con Dao Islands.
Oh, the Con Dao Islands.
This is a remote, breathtaking archipelago known for world-class scuba diving and deep, dark history regarding its former colonial prisons. But it is exponentially more expensive to access and exist there.
How expensive?
A top-tier property in Con Dao, like the Six Senses Resort, starts at well over $800 a night.
Wow, okay. So, knowing the alternatives, let's run through the final verdicts for Phu Yen across the different traveler profiles.
Okay.
Backpackers. The verdict is a resounding yes.
Definitely.
It offers incredible value at $22 a day, amazing street food, and zero scam culture. Just know going in that there's absolutely no party scene. You will not find neon-lit beach clubs or bucket cocktails here.
None.
Mid-range couples. The verdict is a huge yes. This is arguably the strongest value proposition on the board. You are getting an incredibly romantic, high-quality, culturally rich experience for 40 to 55% less than you would pay for the exact same level of comfort in Hoi An.
For families, the verdict is yes, but with strict conditions.
Very strict.
You need to stay at the larger Zone 1 hotels where the staff speaks some English to help with logistics. You must hire private drivers instead of risking the safety of your children on scooters. And you absolutely must secure robust medical evacuation insurance.
Essential for families.
For the luxury traveler, yes, with conditions. Zannier Bai San Ho is a phenomenal world-class property, but it is effectively your only real option.
Right.
If you are content staying within one massive, gorgeous, highly curated compound for a week, it's perfect. If you want to leave the resort and hop between 5 different Michelin-starred restaurants, you will not find them.
For digital nomads, conditional yes. It's a fantastic, highly affordable spot for a 1 to 3 week sprint. But the lack of dedicated co-working spaces and the absence of enterprise-level Wi-Fi infrastructure means it isn't viable as a long-term permanent base like Da Nang.
Not for serious remote work.
And finally, solo travelers. Yes, it is incredibly safe, the local community is highly welcoming, and solo dining at street stalls is culturally normalized and comfortable.
What strikes me as truly remarkable about this analysis is how rare it is in the modern tourism landscape to find a single, distinct geographic footprint that can simultaneously serve a $22 a day backpacker eating noodle soup on a plastic stool and a $600 a night luxury traveler sleeping in a private villa, while allowing both of them to walk out and experience the exact same untouched basalt cliffs and silent sunrises.
It's beautiful, really.
That equilibrium simply doesn't happen in mature, heavily developed markets.
It is a fleeting equilibrium. You know what this entire situation reminds me of? It's exactly like the observer effect in quantum mechanics.
The concept that the mere observation of a phenomenon inevitably alters that phenomenon.
Exactly. In physics, the moment you look at the particle, you change how it behaves. Travel has its own undeniable observer effect.
Oh, for sure.
The very act of us seeking out and visiting these untouched, pristine places like Phu Yen is exactly the catalyst that eventually transforms them into the crowded, heavily scaffolded destinations we were originally trying to escape.
We bring the change.
By traveling there to experience the profound silence, we bring our noise. We bring our demand for better, faster Wi-Fi, which brings the digital nomads, which brings the Western-style cafes, which brings the heavy construction equipment.
It's a cycle.
What happens to a perfect, authentic $21 a night fishing town when the global economy finally figures out how to upgrade the local internet and pour the concrete?
It ceases to be a $21 a night fishing town. It becomes a reflection of the people who came to look at it.
It's a heavy, beautiful paradox. Is it physically possible to leave no footprints in the sand when the entire purpose of the trip is to walk on the beach? I want you to really ponder that paradox the next time you're looking for that undiscovered spot on the map.
Something to think about.
We have unpacked the geography, the math, the mechanics of the storms, and the deep culinary history. The window is open right now in 2026, but it won't stay open forever. Thank you so much for taking this incredible deep dive with us today. It's been a truly fascinating journey to the south central coast of Vietnam. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.